Your Majesty, Queen Maxima, Your Royal Highness, Princess Mary of Denmark, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you on the second day of the third World Conference of Women's Shelters held here in The Hague this year. The third conference. The energy is great. We've been experiencing a wonderful opening ceremony yesterday, and today is the first day we really will work on one of the 5 themes addressed in this conference. And the theme of this morning is economic independence of women survivors. We will have a few keynotes, we will have a panel discussion, a few pitches, and after this plenary session you will all go to your parallel sessions this morning. My name is Jacobine Gill. Together with Aldith Hunkar, sometimes together with, mostly in alternation with, I'll be moderating this conference. Women of over 120 countries are gathered here in this conference. That's a wonderful thing in itself. And there are also, Your Majesty, 3 women present from Argentina. I don't know where they are. Yes, very nice. I'm not going to say especially for you, but they feel very, very honored to have you in their midst today. Thank you, as we all. A lot of energy, and to give you an impression of what we have been experiencing together yesterday, we'll have a short news flash of all the things that happened since the arrival of our guests yesterday morning. Please watch and enjoy.
Good evening for WWN. I am Aldith Hunkar. The third World Conference of Women's Shelters has started in The Hague in Netherlands.
On behalf of the Global Network of Women's Shelters, I welcome you to the opening ceremony of the third World Conference of Women's Shelters. In 2008, the first World Conference was held in Canada by our Canadian sisters, and that is when we formed this global network.
My name is Mary Balikungeri. I come from Rwanda, but I present here today the Africa Network of Women Shelters, where I welcome my brothers and sisters from Africa. Please stand up and we give you a warm welcome. Murakaza neza.
Thank you.
Karibu.
I'm both happy and proud, ladies and gentlemen, that the Netherlands has been given the honor of hosting this year's World Conference on Women's Shelters, and that the Global Network will base its headquarters in The Hague.
I am Femke Halsema. I'm the chair of the Dutch Organization for Women's Shelters, the organization that created this conference for the coming 4 days.
Our role as a police is to protect, to limit and to confirm. We want to be a trustworthy partner in protecting women and children in need. We want to limit the abuse of women and children. And we want to confirm in every way that we can that domestic violence is unacceptable.
The PIN is part of a dream.
Yeah?
And that started many years ago with Rikir, Lisbeth, Sepide, and many more women in Turkey. And the dream was to give a sustainable future and a possibility to have a second chance to survivors of violence.
Ladies and gentlemen, my belief is that the fundamental principle on which shelter policies are founded is protection and support for women offered without compromising their fundamental right to liberty and human dignity.
When I see this, as if you are punished when you become a widow.
Yes, I'm from the country where, the women are, in the past, women were burnt alive in the funeral pyre of their deceased husbands. But that practice is no more now. But what we have experienced that the widows are physically alive, but they are socially dead.
And I believe the only way to heal is to speak out. Speak out. No one speaks. No one. Nothing can change. Laws cannot change if no one speaks.
So I'd like to announce that we are actually breaking a world record for 1 billion rising today. We are all from 115 countries dancing all together in one space to end violence against women and girls. Side and party. And party. Pivot, pivot, circle. Break the chain. Down. Down. Walk. So we just repeat. Side. Side. Box. Box. Side. Side. Out. Cross. Cross. Revolution! Thank you, everyone! Thank you! Woo-hoo! Thank you! Thank you for breaking the world record!
Women together is power.
Yes.
And we should stay together.
My name is Iffat Gill. Today I stand in front of you deeply conflicted because part of me feels that by sharing my story today with you, I'm at some level betraying my family. But at the same time, a strong part of me knows that if we don't talk about these stories, there is no hope for any sort of change. I was raised in Libya and Malta. I had a happy childhood. I was a bit of a rebel and a troublemaker, and my father nurtured that actually, and my mother got the fun job of disciplining me. So I had good education. I was raised to think independently, despite being originally from Pakistan. My family moved back to Pakistan when I was 18. It was a huge adjustment for me. The girls around me in Pakistan did not have the same opportunities and same privileges like I did. But because we were of similar age, we soon became friends. So the girls around me were raised to think that the sole purpose of their life was to make perfect round rotis and babies, and that's what we all should work towards. But since we became friends, we started looking for solutions together for what to do with our free time. So I started a skill center for these girls in my father's guest room, where they taught each other small skills like embroidery, and for the skills they didn't know, we hired a teacher. In that same room, I'm sorry, I'm pausing here because this is the very first time I'm sharing this very personal story about myself. In that very same room, on our slow internet connection that was available to us at that time, I started learning about internet governance, and about how to build an organization. And before I knew it, I was involved with national and international projects online and offline. I was one of the pioneers to get youth involved in the internet governance debate, and I was invited to the UN platforms to speak about youth issues. I was also invited by our Pakistan government to advise on the national ICT policy. All this was moving very fast. But at the same time, it was in very sharp contrast with what was expected of me being a Pakistani girl living in Pakistan in a small town. While I was still getting accustomed to my achievements, some of the family members, they didn't quite like that. So they started highlighting how I was getting old and I should be married off soon at age 26, 27, because that is the age in Pakistan where you're officially actually considered to be late to be married off. And then what happened next was actually the event that changed my life. I turned down a marriage proposal to my first cousin. And before I knew it, overnight almost, I was disconnected from the internet. I was confined to my room as a punishment. And I was not allowed any visitors all of a sudden, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere without supervision. I didn't even have the chance to tell the people I was working with that I will not be available. It was just that abrupt. Now, that did not change my mind, of course. So things had to move for the next phase to persuade me to accept that marriage proposal. Now, sometimes in Pakistan, turning down a marriage proposal, it can get really nasty. It can lead to honor killings, it can lead to acid attacks or kidnappings. But the next tactic used against me was an attack on my moral fiber through rumors about me. Now, this was, of course, a direct path towards getting me killed in the name of the honor. It almost worked. One evening, after a heated debate in the presence of family members and some outsiders, I found myself being strangled with bare hands, staring into the eyes of very people who had raised me to become a strong and independent person. At that point, my foundation, of course, was shaken. It felt like the very ground I stood on had moved from beneath my feet, and I didn't know where I should stand, where I stood. I had become one of them. I had become one of the women I was trying to empower. I had become that woman. And this was a huge adjustment for me again, to accept that this was happening to me, who was fighting for all these rights for women. But as bad as things were going, this incident also changed something within my family. Some of the family members thought that this had gone too far. And with the help and support of some of my family members, I managed to get out of that difficult situation. Now, my memories and my timelines from that period, which took a couple of years, are quite fuzzy. I blocked a lot of memories from that phase, and I'm still trying to deal with them, of course, even today. But in the end, it was very clear that it was not safe for me to stay there anymore. But as usual, no, why don't women leave? I had nowhere to go. Literally, there was no place I could go to. In the end, some of my supporters from within the family, they enabled me and empowered me to choose my own husband eventually. After I got married, I moved to the Netherlands. Of course, then came the long and difficult journey of healing from loneliness, depression, alienation, because everything I had held close and dear, it was all gone. My work was in Pakistan, and I was not. Eventually, I combined my passion for technology and women empowerment and started a new organization called ChundriChoupaal. concept and philosophy behind it is a safe space for women to network and learn and support each other. I started a digital literacy program for young women in Pakistan who were looking for job opportunities, and I recently launched the Code to Change program in the Netherlands to reintegrate women into jobs in the technology center through e-skills trainings. I have not healed fully, but the work I'm doing is very rewarding, and it helps me. No one should have to go through this. I just hope I can help others so they can get out of a similar situation or worse situations, or not get into them in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Iffat Gill from Pakistan. I am that woman. Every plenary session we start with a very personal story from one of the women who've experienced violence and stood up against it in some way or another and is still healing, as we understood. We have come to know Queen Maxima of the Netherlands as a fierce ambassador for microfinance, which has proven itself to be a very useful instrument of giving women in developing countries access to finance. She will address now her keynote speech on this specific topic. How can financial inclusion help women survivors? Please, may I invite you?
Royal Highness, again, ladies, 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 and the men who are actually present to support us here today. We're here today to address the serious issue of violence against women. It is a universal problem, and it is happening in all countries and all cultures. It affects all social groups and all ages, and is often hidden from the outside world. That's exactly why we need to direct our attention to it. Millions of women and their children are familiar with the fear, the isolation, and the shame that are caused by domestic violence. And you're familiar with them too, due to your work in walk-in centers, shelters, or support organizations. I really greatly admire your work and your commitment. You have come here from over 100 different countries to share experiences and learn from your colleagues so that we can all become better at protecting the women and children who are in need of help. The Netherlands is really proud to welcome you here today. The presence of Crown Princess Mary gives this conference an extra dimension. For 8 years now, you have been active as chair of the Mary Foundation, and you give women the courage to break out of the circle of violence. There is no justification for domestic violence, ever. That is very clear. At the same time, we realize there are no easy solutions. Anyone who looks into this issue soon learns how complex the situation of victims can be, how widespread and persistent the problem can be. A third of all women in the European Union have experienced physical or sexual violence themselves. And the figures are much the same elsewhere. In the Netherlands, 1 in 3 incidents of violence to which the police are called involves domestic violence. It is a dark secret behind hidden doors in thousands and thousands of homes. Home should be a safe place, somewhere where you can be yourself together with the people you love. And it is tragic that so many people do not have that safe place. We know that domestic violence has a serious impact on millions of women. It takes away much of their joy in life, and their health suffers too. According to the World Health Organization, women who are the victims of such violence are twice as likely to suffer from depression or addiction. 4 out of 10 women suffer physical injuries. The World Health Organization describes violence against women as a global public health problem of epidemic proportion requiring urgent action. And that is not all. Women's careers also suffer. They're less able to concentrate at work or during their studies. They become less self-confident. They're absent more often, and their performance decreases. This means their futures are at stake, making the problem even more urgent. A Canadian study showed that 8% of victims lost their jobs because of the violence they have suffered. In the Netherlands, the economic cost of domestic violence is estimated at around 450 million euros a year. So obviously, the issue is extremely complex. And to add to the complexity, each woman has her own personal story, and there are no all-round answers. That is why it is so good that you're here today and tomorrow to share your knowledge and experiences. However complex the issues, we do have some insights to build on. First, it is important that women feel able to share their stories. Talking to someone they trust helps them break out of the cocoon of fear and isolation. Taking their colleagues or the boss into their confidence can also help. More than half the women surveyed in a Canadian study found this to be beneficial. Of course, for that to happen, women need to have a workplace where they feel safe. One country that leads the way in this respect is Australia. Many businesses realize how harmful domestic violence is and try to support their employees in various ways by creating a safe workplace. Hopefully, other countries will be inspired by the Australian approach. This brings me to the second of the insights I mentioned: women, economic position, and financial resilience. If you are financially dependent on your partner, it is far harder to break out of the circle of violence in order to make a fresh start. That is why we need to keep promoting women's economic empowerment in combination with education and raising awareness. In many countries, there is still a gender gap in terms of access to financial services. In developing countries, women are still 9% less likely than men to have access to basic financial services. I greatly admire the efforts being made in a number of countries to change that. In Kenya, for example, you can see how market women can benefit from having a savings account of their own. It means that they can spend and invest much more, and so they have far greater control in their own lives. European countries also are paying more attention to women's economic resilience. The Dutch organization, Women Inc., is a very good example, a network that mobilizes all the forces it can to increase opportunities for women. And in Denmark, there's Advice for Life, an initiative of the Mary Foundation. It is a mentor-based program that offers financial, legal, and social counseling to women that suffer from violence. There's a third insight that can help us, too: the importance of taking account of women's personal situation and, where possible, involving the whole family in finding a solution. Since 1974, the Netherlands has had women's shelters whose location is kept secret. Safe houses like these can prevent a great deal of tragedy. But in other cases, it's better to organize shelter in the center of the neighborhoods, in an open setting, in a building where women can receive visitors. That way, these women and their partners can jointly be helped to break free from the spiral of violence and work on the relationships based on respect and equality. Experience shows that many victims are unable to break off contact with the perpetrators of domestic violence, for example, because children are involved. In such cases, it's best to include all family members in a support program. That makes it easier for these women to resume normal life, and families can prepare better for a future without violence. In 2011, I opened the first shelter in the Netherlands that adopted this approach, the Orange House in Alkmaar. It was built with the support of various charities, among which the Orange Fund, which was given to the King and me as a wedding present, and of which we're patrons and very involved. Residents and staff of the Orange House told me their stories. The director said, "We engage in a dialogue with victims and perpetrators. We do not run away, we talk." This new approach has brought much international interest and is also being tried out in other countries. And for example, this is a very good example of the immense value of sharing knowledge and experience. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations has made tackling violence against women a priority in the Sustainable Development Goals for the next 15 years. One goal is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. To this end, the UN sees eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls in public and private spheres as an essential target. Your work is really important to the whole world. Together, we are sending a very clear message today. Everyone has a right to a life without violence. No one who is affected by domestic violence should be left on their own to cope with it. They all deserve a fresh start in a safe place. May our joint efforts be stronger than the fear and isolation of the victims, and may we give them hope for a better future. I really wish you, for all these women and children in the world, a very fruitful couple of days. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Majesty, for your passionate and compassionate contribution to our conference. Thank you. Gerlinde Silvis is Director of Human Resources for the Rabobank, and she will also address women's self-sufficiency in her speech, in her contribution to this conference. And Gerlinde Silvis, may I invite you on stage, please? Because you will not only address this issue, but you also brought us two small examples of how the Rabobank supports women's self-sufficiency in India, I understood. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
And I think we're going to watch a short movie now first. Okay, let's sit there.
Op het platteland van India leeft een groot deel van de bevolking onder de armoedegrens. Naast armoede is er ook veel ongelijkheid. Vrouwen hebben minder kansen dan mannen en zijn zich vaak niet bewust van hun rechten en kansen. Om hier verandering in te brengen zijn vrouwen in de staat Andhra Pradesh sinds 1993 georganiseerd in zogenaamde zelfhulpgroepen. De vrouwen komen bijeen in kleine groepen om gezamenlijk te sparen, een klein krediet te krijgen en zich te ontwikkelen. Dit heeft uiteindelijk geresulteerd in het opzetten van de zuivelcoöperatie IMD. De zuivelcoöperatie ontwikkelt zich goed, maar om verder te groeien heeft de coöperatie behoefte aan training en kapitaal. Met behulp van een microkrediet kunnen de leden meer buffels aanschaffen, waardoor hun melkproductie kan stijgen. Voor een jonge coöperatie als IMD is het echter moeilijk om een reguliere lening te krijgen, omdat banken dat te risicovol vinden. Gezien de grote noodzaak voor de boeren om wel te kunnen investeren in hun melkveebedrijfje, bestrekt Rabobank Foundation een lening aan de zuivelcoöperatie. Melkproductie is een goede aanvullende bron van inkomsten voor boeren in India en is vooral een vrouwenbusiness. Vrouwen hebben in India weinig bewegingsvrijheid en koeien kunnen in de directe omgeving van het huis gehouden worden. De melk kan 2 keer per dag bij het lokale verzamelpunt worden gebracht, waarnaast het verzamelen van de melk ook training wordt gegeven om de kwaliteit van de melk nog verder te verhogen. Betere melk levert immers meer geld op. De coöperatie heeft een hele positieve ontwikkeling gehad op de gemeenschap, doordat de productiviteit en de kwaliteit van de melk zijn gestegen. Dit heeft geleid tot een prijsstijging en daarmee inkomensgroei. Een ander belangrijk resultaat is dat de positie van de vrouwen sterk is verbeterd. Niet alleen economisch, maar ook sociaal. Door hun lidmaatschap van IMD is hun levensstandaard verhoogd en hun zelfvertrouwen toegenomen. Veel vrouwen zijn analfabeet, maar dat weerhoudt hen er niet van te strijden voor een betere positie en voor hun belangrijkste ambitie: goede scholing van hun kinderen. De zuivelcoöperatie helpt hen, met steun van de Rabobank Foundation, om deze doelen te verwezenlijken.
I'm so excited to be here. For me, it's quite unusual to be in a meeting with so many women. So thank you to give me the opportunity to be here and to share some of our experiences. We are a prosperous country and we value our freedom and equality. But even so, here too, women are not always treated equally. Unfortunately, domestic violence against women is still a frequent occurrence and is found in all walks of life. In the workplace, women are subordinated and may face outright discrimination. For one thing, women still earn substantially less than men. Why is that? And what can we do to change that? As the Human Resource Manager of Rabobank, these are issues that are close to my heart, as you can understand. Change begins with cooperation and the exchange of know-how. As a cooperative institution, Rabobank knows that better than anyone else. Our bank was founded in response to the extreme poverty and inequality in rural areas. Poor farmers in the 19th century had no access to finance and were at the mercy of untrustworthy dealers. By founding our cooperative, the farmers had the opportunity to borrow at fair rates and to save and develop economically. Self-reliance proved to be key in effecting structural change. It's this idea of cooperative self-reliance I'd like to talk to you about today. Sometimes change seems impossible, but if enough people are prepared to pull together, then change is possible. That's why we are here. We have gathered together here to share our insights and expertise and to bolster the worldwide network of women. Through cultural contacts and the exchange of ideas, new ideals and fresh hope spring up. Indian women see that Western women don't necessarily stay home to do the housework and start contemplating a career. African women who are inspired to go to school and to take their own decisions can be a shining example to other women on the continent. The empowerment of women is hugely important, not only because each woman has rights, but also because increasing women's freedoms, improving education, and creating job opportunities for women is a key driver for economic and social growth. Women are naturally inclined to work for the common good. That's a major strength. A woman feels responsible for her surroundings, for her family, for her village, for her work. She will want to use any extra income to improve the family's housing, to secure better schooling for her children, and so on. Improving the position of women paves the way for choices in the longer term that, in my view, can contribute to resolving social and economic inequalities. At Rabobank, we contribute to improving the position of women in various ways and all over the world. For example, through our Rabobank Foundation, we support more than 150 different projects annually, aimed at creating opportunities for self-development for the underprivileged. Like the women in India, who, thanks to our support, are able to join a self-help group and so are able to access education and start their own businesses. Or like the indigenous women of Peru, who, thanks to a microloan, are able to make colorful scarves and sell it at markets. But here in the Netherlands too, the Foundation is active in its efforts to boost women's economic and social self-reliance. I would like to tell you a little bit more about our foundation and the significance of its work. Through Rabobank Foundation, we aim to contribute to increasing the self-reliance and empowerment of people in the Netherlands and 24 developing countries. In the Netherlands, our contribution helps the underprivileged and vulnerable in society to take part in work, education, sport, cultural life. And abroad, we support farmer cooperatives in impoverished areas where there's no access to finance or expertise. Such activities are entirely in keeping with the origins of our bank. For us, investing in self-reliance means investing in people who want to help themselves, people who want to get on in life, but who just need a helping hand. These are the people we want to offer our support, not as individuals, but as a collective. We support them by extending financing and donations to set up and develop cooperatives. That way, strong organizations are created that can act as a catalyst for local, sustainable economic growth. The problems which small farmers face all over the world are obvious. They are too small scale and too poor to qualify for affordable credits and often have too little expertise when it comes to good cultivation technique or running a business. Without these two things, money and know-how, many farmers become caught up in a downward spiral of poverty. Rabobank Foundation offers financial assistance to cooperatives and producer organizations, such as dairy farmers and those growing cotton, coffee and cacao. The Indian subcontinent is one of the places where Rabobank is active through its foundation. In the rural areas of India, a large part of the population lives below the poverty line. The position of women is often very poor. They are dependent on their husbands and have to wait and see what portion of his income is left to run the household. To boost the women's position, they are organized into self-help groups per village. This is an important first step on the road to self-reliance. The members of these solidarity groups club together to save, and these savings are used to extend loans to one to another. As such, mutual trust and cooperation lay the basis for further growth. A logical next step from these self-help groups is often the formation of a small savings and loan cooperative that serves to promote cooperation between the different groups. The setting up of the IMD Dairy Cooperative is a good example of one of our projects. Colleagues from Rabobank Foundation will be giving a workshop about this later today. This dairy cooperative in the state of Andhra Pradesh originated with a variety of self-help groups set up to give women the opportunity for economic development. Dairy cattle are a stable source of income and particularly suitable for women because the cows can be tended close to home. Initially, we helped the IMD cooperative by giving it a donation to boost the quality of the milk and to strengthen the organization. As a result, the milk price rose by 20%. To stimulate further growth and to boost capacity, the cooperative sought more credit to buy more cows. Our loan to them is intended for microcredits for around 1,000 women dairy farmers so that they can buy buffalo to produce more milk. By working together, these women can help one another. Their self-confidence increases and their position within the family is enhanced as a result of the additional financial income. The women of IMD all have a dream: education for their children, so that they can build themselves a better future. And that's a dream they share with all women all over the world, because education is an important step towards development and growth. From India, I'd like to travel with you back to the Netherlands, because here, at home in the Netherlands too, Rabobank Foundation is working to help women to build up independent lives. Women are victims of people trafficking, for example. Through the Not for Sale Foundation, these women are given the opportunity to develop via schooling and work programs. Through schooling, training and coaching, the Not for Sale Foundation opens up new opportunities on the labor market for victims of people trafficking and gives them a new perspective on the future. Not for Sale is also here today and is very happy to share with you its know-how and its approach. But of course, the subject of women's empowerment stretches far beyond our work as a foundation. As an employer, Rabobank is also aware of the importance of contributing to diversity in our own organization. When it comes to good education, things here in the Netherlands are changing fast. The number of young women with a college or university degree is rising faster than among young men. 44% of women aged between 25 and 35 are graduates, compared with just 37% of men in the same age group. That should have a positive effect on women's labor market participation, one should assume. As a result of those educations of those women, the participation of women in our organization is increasing, and that's important. I know from my own experience that you can't make the difference when you are alone. We should work together, empower other women, stimulate their education and participation. When we put our energy to that, we surely will make the difference. Let's reach out, let's collaborate, let's work together for a better future for women all over the world. I strongly believe we know what we should do to come there. And yesterday, when I was preparing this speech, I got an email from one of my friends, and I thought this can't be a coincidence. It's about listening to your own voice. I'd like to share it with you. The voice. There is a voice inside of you that whispers all day long. I feel that this is right for me. I know that this is wrong. No teacher, preacher, parent, friends, or wise man can decide what's right for you. Just listen to the voice that speaks inside. I hope that we, as women, that we will listen collectively to our inner voices. And then I'm sure we can improve the future for women all over the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerlinde Silvis, for your speech on the importance of access to finance for women, and not only for women themselves, but for the whole community. Thank you very much. We will have a panel discussion within a few minutes. Before that, I will present some facts and figures. But maybe a little introduction first, because we are talking now about economic independence. And another aspect of that, another aspect than access to finance, is of course to be employed and to stay employed. And the evidence so far shows that women who have a history of domestic violence tend to have a much more irregular work pattern and career pattern than women without. So what can we do to improve their situation? That will be the topic of the panel discussion. And before I present some facts and figures, I would like to invite the three panelists to the stage, and they will be Ludo McFerran. She is the National Director of the initiative Safe at Home, Safe at Work in Australia, and she is setting a very good example. You will hear that later on. Then we have Mary Balikungeri, and she is the representative, the board member of the Global Network on Women's Shelters, and she represents the African continent here. Please come to the stage when I call your name, to have some speed in the program, because we are running a little late. And last but not least, I would like to invite Gudrun Burnet. Friends call her Goody, and she really appreciates it if we did the same. Hi, Goody. And she's the co-founder of Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance in England. Please take your seat behind the desk, and I will present some facts and figures before we start the discussion. And I hope to see some slides now. Because the first, we have tried to separate it in 3 subtopics. The first is why companies are not involved. The second is why companies should be involved. And the third, where companies are involved. And that's where Australia comes in picture. Why companies are not involved. The first issue here is personal privacy, and it has 2 sides. Because the employee is hesitant to share with her employer any experience of sexual violence. She's of course afraid it will not be heard. She's ashamed for it. So it is kept away from her work position. Then there is the employer side. The employer tends to think that it's something of the private domain with which he has nothing to do. So he is very hesitant to act whenever anything comes to his attention. Then there is the lack of knowledge of the impact of violence on the workplace. And the impact is quite big, as you will see in a minute. And last but not least, companies are not at all prepared for any reaction at all. They really have no tools to address the issue. So that's why companies are not involved. Then we have why they should be involved. Not only because every company, of course, is inclined to do good and do the best thing for his or her employees, but also because he can benefit from real attention to the issue. There is a great loss of income for many companies who have women who are dealing with domestic violence at their home situation, because it affects their work, the quality of their work, and the attention they can bring up to their work. And there is research done in Canada that shows that almost 80 million is lost due to this cause, which is quite a figure. So companies should be involved. And then we have, luckily, some examples of where companies are involved. And now we have to mention Australia, because in Australia, and we will hear that from Ludo McFerran in a minute, 750 enterprises have signed agreements with a domestic violence clause. So it's really one of their working conditions. And that's a very good example, and we are very curious to hear more about that. Ludo McFerran, please enlighten us. What is the secret of Australia?
Well, the secret really was a partnership between the domestic violence sector and the trade union movement. Mm-hmm. And together we did a big national survey which found that domestic violence affected workers being able to get to work, it affected their performance at work and their safety. So obviously it was costing businesses real money in terms of lost attendance and productivity.
So there was a big interest to
big
deal
interest
with it.
in that. We had the evidence. The unions, we put together this domestic violence clause which provides for paid domestic violence leave to be able to do things like go down to court and get an order to protect you, your family and your work. It provides for safety planning at work, and it absolutely provides for protection against being sacked. So your job is safe and your work will support you, and that is your right. So the difference was we turned domestic violence into an industrial issue, and we ensured that the majority of women in Australia who experience domestic violence and who work can keep their job as a right, not just an option taken up by companies.
And so the cooperation with the union was a very important one.
The partnership with the trade union movement, that's what made the difference.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a very inspiring example of how it really can be dealt with. Mary, you represent here the African continent, which is of course a very, very large scale. But is there anything going on this field in Africa or in the countries you know?
Well, I think what I would hate to pretend that I'm representing Africa. Africa is a very huge continent.
We saw you on the film and there it was.
But I do believe what I represent and what I do in my everyday work is really what happens in other different countries. My work involves a lot to deal with women at the grassroots level, and I think that's where the mass is. And the fact that that's where the mass is, and I think that's where we need to pay a lot of attention. In our approaches, it's mainly an approach that we use in my own country, Rwanda. You know our history has been the ugly history. And it's a history that drives every one of us to work towards never again. And so whatever work we do at the grassroots level, it means really organizing women, communities, and also paying much more attention to those women who were affected by the violence and who continue to be affected in their domestic lives. So we promote spaces of women. And in these spaces of women, we are also looking beyond economic gains. We are also trying to address the other issues that affect women, their legal rights, their inheritance property rights. And more importantly, and what I think is also happening in other countries beyond Rwanda, is that we are struggling with issues of making linkages beyond grassroots movement to the entrepreneurship, especially bringing the entrepreneur women in the midst of those women who are actually producers. Who are the women who need to promote the quality control of the production at that lower level? And it is in that context that within this whole network of the African network, we are trying to say, beyond where we are operating at our national level, making linkages with our national entrepreneurship women, who also should be also part of the rights approach thinking. How are we connecting as a region, and how are we also connecting globally? Yeah. And what we are simply saying to the global is, we need to have a division of labor in terms of advocacy, because women are not in the financial sector. Yeah. And we need to review and ask ourselves, why are we absent? Why is it that our voices, be it global, be it regional, be it women, we are absent, our voices are not heard, and we need to put our foot there. There could be a reason why.
Your voice
we need
is
to
heard
review
here
that.
now, I think,
we need
very
to review
clearly. And of course, it shows, this topic shows the large variety in situations we encounter in all the countries present here, because Australia is, of course, a completely different situation than many countries in Africa. So we have to deal with all these differences, and women's rights in general is, of course, a very good starting point when you want to address this issue. Australia comes from another starting point. Yes, I think so. Well, but maybe we are all united in the same goal. Goody, if I may call you like that. I had to, I understood, sorry. The situation in England, you're a community safety manager, so I think you tend to look more at the surroundings where people live to provide more safety for women.
Well, I'm a co-founder of the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance, which actually looks at this twofold. So for organisations, how they support staff, exactly like Ludo was saying, but also how we can empower our communities, because you have shelter and all of those sorts of provisions, but actually to keep people in jobs, we need to think about other housing options and what housing providers can do. And they can identify domestic abuse very early on through accessing properties like gas engineers, caretakers, contractors, and then we can actually try and support women. This is a national alliance, so we're talking, there's 1,700 housing providers and their corporations as well. So they need to be thinking not only about their staff that are suffering, because I've had so many disclosures since I've been working at Peabody, which is the housing provider I work at, and how we can safety plan, but then also how we can improve the whole housing sector response in the UK to tackling domestic abuse alongside those specialist services to make this everybody's business, because in isolation we cannot do this, and we need the large corporations, we need the housing providers. We haven't got enough housing, so we haven't got enough funding, so therefore we need to all work together to try and keep women in jobs, financially stable, and empower them to actually make their own choices about their lives rather than have to, in some cases, leave. So it's a different thing. If you want to hear more, I'm doing a workshop
But
at
it's
11.
very much also about a form of continuity in your life after this disruptive experience of domestic violence. I think that's the common denominator. I thank you so very much for enlightening very briefly the ways we can address this issue, from human rights in general to the housing surroundings, and last but not least, to make domestic violence and the way employers address it to a right, an industrial issue, which is very inspiring. Thank you very much. You can take your seats now.
Thank you.
We have 2 very short pitches now to go, and they will enlighten a topic that's addressed in more extent in the parallel sessions after this plenary session. And for that, I would like to invite Chiara Condi from the United States and Mandisa Monakali. And I forgot where she's from. I'm so sorry. South Africa. Yeah? Right. Please, ladies, join me on stage. Both of you. Where is Chiara? Will you start with a pitch? Yeah? Please.
Hi. I started Led by Her, which is an organization that helps women who have suffered from violence become entrepreneurs. Every year, we accompany about 30 women from between the ages of 20 and 60 who have suffered from all types of violence. And we work with 2 business schools, ESEG and ESCP in Paris, in order to give them a program of 100 workshops from June to July. We have about 200 professionals, coaches, and professors who volunteer in the project today. And I want to say that when I started this, I was 26, and our first year budget was 500 euros, so that it's possible for everybody. And I created this around 2 main visions. One is the belief that violence can only be broken through freedom, choice, and independence. And that means that it is important, on one side, to heal, and there are many services that provide psychological, medical, and social help, but there is very little to rebuild. And so we give women the tools so that they can make the professional choices that they want in their lives and rebuild their lives around their dreams. The second vision was to change the way society looks at violence against women, because we have about 50% men and the other 50% women who have never worked with around the subject of violence against women who are in our program as volunteers. And this creates a new sensitivity and an awareness. And they tell me these women are amazing and strong, and these are the stories that they go back and they tell others. And that's how the vision of women who have suffered from violence is going to change in our society, and that's how the stigma is going to wear away. And it's only once...
I have to
yes,
point
okay.
at the clock.
Sure.
Yeah?
Okay. Should I finish? Or?
Finish. Last
Okay, great. Well, I have many stories to tell in my workshop, but I want to share one thing that somebody said in the program. She said, "This is the first day of the rest of my life." And I said, "Thank you. It's also my birthday." And I wanted to wish that all the women that you work with can have that first day in their lives, and that it's possible for everybody. Thank you.
Okay. And now, 2 minutes for Mandisa Monakali from South Africa, please.
Good morning. You could see women are very good timekeepers. Thank you very much. I'm from an organization called Litalabantu in South Africa, Cape Town. It was the first organization of women of color. We're celebrating 27 years this year of existence. As a survivor myself, I don't call myself a victim. I'm a survivor. And I believe women who are affected by domestic violence, no one is a victim. They are all survivors. Little Abantu always believe in a more holistic approach that involves all members of the community as a part of the solution. Because we are saying, let's sit together, let's talk, let's come up with a solution. It borrows from our African tradition, where the inkosis, meaning chiefs, of the community will gather all members of their community to discuss their current issues and together formulate positions and possibilities to solve the problems that they were facing. And also, we borrow this theme of community mobilization from the previous, where we come from as a country, where our mothers mobilize against apartheid. That's where we borrow community mobilization. We borrow it and we use the language that the people on the ground are using. And as an organization, we've been successful for the 27 years because we believe we are working with the people on the ground. And the women themselves, they have the solution. They know what's going on, but sometimes it's the know-how. But as an organization that is based on the ground, dealing with the issues with survivors themselves, where we say, let's sit down, let's talk about these issues. And therefore, I would like to invite you to join me in the Amazon foyer, where we'll be discussing how we mobilize our communities. Because of lately, researchers are coming as if mobilization is a new thing. It's not, it has been there for decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we are so strict with our 2 minutes. Well, strict but just, as they say. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the formal part of this plenary session. Our royal guests are leaving this conference room now. I would please ask you to remain seated for a while, because I have some things to say about all the parallel sessions. But for now, this was a beautiful morning to start our first working day of this conference. Thank you so much, Your Highnesses, for attending us. Thank you. Okay, for some brief remarks now that will help you find your way through the program. You will go all to your parallel sessions immediately after this plenary session. And most of you have, upon registration, said what parallel session you would like to attend. Now, there are 2 possibilities for having a blank in your card. The first one is that you had not yet registered for parallel session in particular. In that case, you are required to go to the reception area, where on a table there are cards indicating where there is still room in the parallel session, and you can take your pick. It's also possible that the session you wanted to attend is cancelled. We had many sessions, and as you know, we are not God, we cannot arrange everything and everyone. So there are unforeseen situations which has forced us to cancel some of the sessions. In that case also, you go to the reception area, where on the table I just mentioned are cards that give you an impression of what sessions are still open for joining. The structure of the day is every day the same way. We have a plenary session to start with on the theme at hand. Then there are the parallel sessions. There is no break. There is water in your parallel session rooms. And then we have a lunch break at around 12:30 until 1:30, and then you will be back in this plenary room for the next plenary part of the day. And that's how it goes every day. So that will help you find your way through the program. Is this clear for everyone? Because it's very important that you really know where to go afterwards. Because we are a little late, the parallel sessions will start 15 minutes later, which means at 10:15 sharp. Not only in the Amazon room, but everywhere. Upon leaving this room, you are kindly requested to deposit your headset, should you have one, for the translation. Please leave them outside this room, same as yesterday. There are many provisions for all the visitors of this conference, like a prayer room, a mother care room, there is a mobile charge point, etc., etc. Please find your way, and if not possible to find your way, please ask at the reception area. And then rejoin here at 1:30 for the next plenary session, which will be moderated by Aldit Hunkar. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.